I took on this project because a client had reached out to me and wanted a Corten rain curtain water feature. However, she also wanted a smaller planter and water feature combo that she had seen on Pinterest. She had asked if my water feature will rust the same way the planter would rust. So I did some research into the pictures that she found as a reference for the planter and discovered that the planter that she was looking at was made out of mild steel, whereas my water features are made out of Corten. It's a weathering steel and designed specifically to rust. Once I let her know the difference between the two metals and that they would rust differently, she asked if I could make the planter water feature combo so that they would match when they rust. Like all new project designs, I decided to sketch a version of what she had shown me in the pictures. Now, when I say sketch, I use a program called SketchUp. It allows me to draw the design to scale and troubleshoot any of the issues that may arise before I start cutting material. When I reached out to the manufacturers of Corten and had asked them whether it was a good idea or not to use their material to hold water, their answer was a definitive no. This is not a good idea. So I knew that anything that would need to hold water would need to be stainless like my water features. On this project, I'm using a 14 gauge Corten sheet. I start with the largest piece first, which is the outer Corten box. Before I get started, I need to remove the mill scale, which comes on Corten and hot rolled mild steel that is 14 gauge or thicker. If you want to know how I remove the mill scale, you can check out this video here. I'm just tacking the corners so the sides stay in one place. I want the Corten box to be somewhat flexible because I'm going to be placing a stainless steel upper water basin inside the Corten box. By doing this, I ensure that the stainless upper basin fits into the Corten box even if the stainless basin is slightly out of square. For the stainless upper water basin, I had my local steel supplier bend the inner portion of the upper stainless basin to cut down on welding time. In this exploded view of the sketch, you can see what the upper stainless water basin will look like. With the inner portion of the upper stainless water basin welded, I went ahead and started building the planter portion of the water feature. The planter sits on top of the upper stainless basin and drops into the middle of the stainless upper basin by 3 inches. This gives you a total of 6 inches for plants and soil. Once I confirm that the planter portion lines up properly with the upper stainless basin, I start welding the bottom part of the planter so that it fits properly inside the opening of the upper stainless basin. Next, I'll weld the outer walls of the upper stainless basin to complete this part of the project. To ensure that the outer stainless wall was correctly positioned, it was very important to use as many clamps as possible to hold it in place where I wanted it. Now, I'm going to bounce back onto the planter portion to clean up the welds. With all of the welded corners cleaned, it's time for a test fit. Going back to the Corten box, this is why I only tack welded the corners on the Corten box, because I want to drop the planter and the upper stainless basin inside. Right now, it's all upside down. This allows me to flush the top of the Corten box to the planter top. Once I see that everything fits nicely, I'm going to install a framework that attaches to the inside of the Corten box for the upper stainless basin to rest on. Okay, now for the fun part. Time to flip the Corten box upright to see how the planter and the upper stainless basin sit on that framework, and right now it seems to fit in nicely. Now I'm going to cut the opening that will allow the water to waterfall out of the upper stainless basin and into the lower stainless basin. Now if you've made it this far into the video, make sure you stick around to the end. I'm going to show you 2 really cool modifications that I made to the planter portion of this water feature. It truly opens up your options for a variety of looks. Now, I'm going to drop the upper stainless basin inside the Corten box, and I can mark where it sits in the opening. This is where the waterfall effect occurs from the upper stainless basin into the lower stainless basin. The cool thing about this is you can customize the waterfall location and size. Place it in the center, on the left, on the right, make it 10 inches wide or 12 inches wide, or make it the full length of the Corten box. Once again, making sure that the upper stainless basin cutout lines up with the Corten box cutout. Now here, I'm actually jumping onto the lower stainless basin. Because fabricating everything in our shop custom, if you wanted a full-length waterfall, we simply need to make a larger stainless basin for you. The nice thing about custom fabrication is we can make changes along the way to accommodate your specific needs for your project. It's important to remember that on all of our water features, you are going to need electric and water access. You can see here in the lower stainless basin, the brass fitting is where the plumbing will connect from the lower basin to the upper stainless basin. Because the lower stainless basin actually gets buried below grade in the dirt, we make a 1-inch angle stainless framework so that you can slide a Corten cover over the lower stainless basin for aesthetics. Although we do keep the same rusted seal look, for the sake of longevity of the water feature, the water is stored and moves between stainless to ensure that the Corten will not be submerged in water. Now I've set the water feature up so we can test it, with the lower stainless basin in place just under the Corten box. For this particular water feature, I'm using a 1200 GPH pump. I'll leave a link in the description. This connects directly from the lower stainless basin to the upper stainless basin. Now, because the upper stainless basin is higher than the lower stainless basin, it's necessary to add in a check valve between the upper and the lower basins. If you don't add in a check valve when the pump is turned off, gravity will allow the water from the upper basin to go down into the lower basin, which will overflow the lower basin due to the amount of water shared between both basins. It's also important to note that you need to use a swing type check valve as opposed to a spring type check valve. The spring check valve will reduce the pressure from the pump and not allow the upper stainless basin to fill properly. Now for a water test. With the fountain effect working well, what do you think when I add the planter? Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I had a couple of modifications that I've made to the planter portion of the planter waterfall combo. The first is a miniature reflection pool. This is just a smaller version of the big reflection pool that we sell on our website. This gives you the option of having a waterfall effect from the lower Corten box and an additional water feature on top. And the third modification, which I think is really cool, I've added a fire pit option. So if you don't want the planter, we can add the components to this product that will allow you to have a waterfall at the bottom and a fire pit on the top. And if you're specifically interested in creating the fire pit, check out this video where I walk you through the process of how I actually created the fire pit portion of the planter water feature combo. I hope you got something out of this video, and if you did, leave a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe now. And if you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. I try to answer all the questions that I get from you. See you in the next video.